All right, everybody. This is my last try because I tried something. I don't know if it's gonna work, but I got no other tricks in the bag. My tech is just old, so see what we can do. All right, good. Guys, I'm gonna be here for I'll try to be here for an hour. Okay. Should be able to be here until for an hour. Um, I just have so many things I'm trying to do that I'm trying to give everyone some concentrated attention here. But when I travel, I need just certain the smallest amount of time gives me a lot of advantage. You know what I mean? And there's just so many things I'm trying to do, keeping busy and stuff. You know what I mean? There's different standards. For example, different standards like when we teach teach students we teach students that are in prison. There are different standards and modalities that we use when we teach students in the classroom. There's different modalities that we use when we teach students via the stream only. The ones that stream but also contact me afterwards, those, right? So when I go through the amount of students that I'm teaching, um, it's a very overwhelming amount. You know what I mean? It's a lot, and I have to keep those standards, and I expect a lot if we're gonna build. You know what I mean? I expect you to be on point. Um, if I say that this is something that ought to be done, probably should do it. If I say something not needs to be done, you should do it. You got to do it. Um, I just think that most of the teacher's time is spent um, seeing other potential students or students not fulfill their potential. All right, so this is very important. You know what I mean? It's very important. It's very important that we look at ourselves as, if we look at ourselves as students, we look at ourselves as those that have potential, and we should, we're always so easy to say that we need a break, that we need a rest. You know what I mean? And I keep trying to impress upon everybody, and I'm saying now directly that I spend most of my time trying to reason why I shouldn't rest, why I should go an extra an extra mile. You know what I'm saying? Um, how much more can I fit into this amount of time so that I could earn this? You know what I mean? Um, it's something like for example, I'll spend time watching the Mets games, right? That's 3 hours, right? I end up spending the entire game writing, probably writing verses. King, a lot of it. These 2 games I get to watch, 3 games I get to watch this weekend. I'm probably going to be writing verses, right? Especially after what we planned and everything like that. I'm ready to go. But trying to use my time efficiently. You know what I mean? Reading certain things. You know what I mean? Um, Studying other things between. Um, I'm not saying to multitask every enjoyable moment in your life. I'm just saying that the more you go around, the less you see that people are really find this knowledge of self. People don't find this knowledge of self. This is something that isn't found. You know what I mean? And I keep trying to tell people that if you actually make it through the door, you actually found something that other people don't find. Um, if you email me and I'm emailing you back, and we build, you have found something that is very difficult to find. Like, I know this because I come from a neighborhood that was so close to the heart of Medina. If you think of it, you know, as far as miles, it's just a different neighborhood in Brooklyn I was in. and nobody had it, and I had no way of contacting it. Even though I took trips to Bed-Stuy and knew people, I did interviews. I remember I did artist interviews, and when I was coming up as in my early days of journalists, when you had to travel to the neighborhood. So I'd be in P.E.A.C.E, I'd be in Medina, other parts of Medina, right? Because where I'm from in Medina, there's no, there were MCs, there were artists, but I already exhausted those, and the magazines didn't want them necessarily, you know. So that was more of my local pursuits, right? But every time when you're by yourself is when you are your own teacher. I am not your teacher when you are alone. Okay, I'm just a guidepost when you are alone. Okay, you are your own teacher. You have to have this theory that says, at this moment, am I learning? What am I learning at this moment? You know what I mean? To always be building, you know, because the more, if you're really teaching, that means you're around the 85%. And if you're looking down on the 85%, you're looking at them the wrong way. You're looking at them from a perspective of, well, they don't want to take their chances and that. And I'm telling you that if you're there watching the 85, you are most likely their best chance, and the one that if it doesn't get presented to them, they're not going to get it. Okay, that's a fact, you know. So, in what gauge, what way will you be able to present this knowledge as yourself, as your way of life, as your nature, where others, uh, would be in tune with it, right? How well are we dealing with this? How many more of my generation have to keep saying, I got to renew my history, right? I got to renew it. I got to do this again. I don't have it on cap as good, you know? You know how many things that we learn? Like, you know how many times I'll fumble a degree and just say, okay, it's time to sit down. Let's get this correct. You know what I mean? And then the next month I fumble it again. Then the next month I get it right. Or the next day or the next week. It's almost like we're afraid to gather new knowledge. We're afraid to use it. And this is why when I make this 1 to 10 sheet, which is what I was trying to say, the study sheet, I was writing it a long time. I don't know who's here still, King and 793rd piece and Goods, Malik, peace of God. I let it bubble in my head. All the plus lessons I've written, I let them stay in my head for a while before I start writing them. I start to think the real reality of it is that these plus lessons, you get a plus lesson, right, from the God. It just always amazed me. This is something that was written down and it survived 20, 30 years, you know? That's what it was, the plus lessons I got. They survived 20, 30 years. And I said, I don't need to write it, let's say, beautifully epic, which is usually the main issue when I write anything, because I write as an artist, you know, whether it's philosophy or it's a poem or if it's a verse. But my main thought writing the plus lessons was how long will what I write here be useful? How long will it be useful? Right? Can we look at it? Plus lessons that I've written in 2008, 2010, 2011, 12. How long will it be useful? And people are still using it. People are still finding worth in it. A lot of reality is that I find worth in it. And the truth is that when you share things with people, you are sharpening the way that you deal with them. You know, we don't want to. We never. We never want to harm anyone by giving them knowledge that they cannot use. And the way I judge that is, can these people really test it? If you teach somebody something, right, and they can't test it, then that means that realistically that they can't really use it. It's not being used. Okay. Wisdom is about use, but it's also about testing the knowledge. I'm gonna say this again. Wisdom is using, but it is always a testing of the knowledge. When you test the knowledge, you give it experience with your mind, yourself, and that gives it the understanding, right? The understanding. When it gets the understanding, this revelation of its purpose, then it is lived as your culture. You step out of the mental into the physical reality of presenting it somehow to the world. This cannot be understated. Cannot be understated enough. You know? So, The Knowledge Itself anthology was a book that Supreme Understanding published, right? As a collection of essays from gods and earths in this nation around a variety of topics in a level of simplicity. It wasn't supposed to be complex, it was supposed to be simple, rudimentary, introductory, right? It's supposed to be introductory, okay? And he had asked some other people. I was available. He was doing it along with C.E.A.C.E Life, and he needed a third man to co-edit, and I accepted that. And it was a very good learning experience for me. You know what I mean? I learned some things I wouldn't do. I learned some things I want to do, um, and it just was more chips on the very long editorial belt that I have. Right, but yeah, yeah, you know, it certainly was not a relationship of us three editing, and we all had equal say or work in it. You know, I was definitely the last man on the totem pole there. You know, but a substantial amount of work in there. I edited um, and added on as best as I could. Um, some of those people aren't the true and living gods, true and living earths no more, right? I mean, even my the one of you know one of one of the mothers of my daughters, who at the time was dealing with the knowledge, wrote an essay in there. The essay is still worthwhile, right? But they're not in the nation. They don't deal with this knowledge. Right? they chose the mysterious pursuits. But the book is still very powerful. You know. Yeah, Lord Jamal has an opening essay, so you know that the longevity of the work is not just because everybody actually continued to show and prove that they was the true and living God or the true and living earth. You know, but it's a still very powerful book. Um, I got a letter from a brother I'm teaching in prison, and he learned about my credentials of what I had done through the Knowledge of Self book. So it's it's a it's a it's a powerful work, a useful work too. You know what I mean? So yeah. I also edited a lot Jihad's book. I'm already forgetting the title of it. What was the title of it? Let me see. This is crazy. I'm forgetting my own resume. Let's see. The Immortal Birth. Yep. I edited that book too. I also edited the entire trilogy of books from Star Mel, the Righteous Way series. Right? So I think those are incredible books. Mhm. It's a great honor to edit those and be the sole editor. I know I didn't do those, you know. But that's peace. That's peace. Peace to the God. All right. But yeah, you know, I wanna I just wanna make that born because in this nation, I told this to a student I'm teaching in the prisons. I will only work with him if he corresponds by letter. I want him to embrace his limitation. So he could use email because you know the prison system they could use email, but we weren't. So you know we just kept going by letter. Um, but I'm not going to give you my phone number. I'm not going to give you my phone number. I want you to master the limitations of your environment. You know. But I told this student something that I think is worthy of all students to learn. You're really the true and living God, right? Then what you have to do is you have to work in such a way where you will recognize not for what you say you are, but for your works, right? You know, we used to build with the gods. We used to build with the gods, and let's say, you know, freedom is in my head. You know, Papa Wu is in my head right now, and I find it disgusting, by the way, that certain people, when they have a narrow mindset and they want to defame gods that are no longer here. I'm a historian, though, so I'm very well in tune and very comfortable with speaking about those who are no longer here. I am very comfortable with that. I'm a historian. I don't mind doing that. I don't. It has to be done about all people, right? God's is no different. Um, but what I don't care for is the slander that from people that they were actually around when they were alive. They had all the time to criticize and challenge and and they never did. And now all of a sudden they levy. He was never really smart. He was always pretty stupid. He did this. Now listen, I know these elders from my enlightener on, and all the elders that taught me that passed away. They all did things that I disagree with, and it could be so minuscule that it could be as minuscule as, you know, I'm vegan and he ain't meat. Sorry, but I disagree with that, right? Um, so the way they dealt with their relationships with women or et cetera, it'd be anything because I knew them personally, right? But everybody that I hear shit about that is negative, they're calling to the question their abilities as teachers, their sincerity and their effectiveness, and the worthiness of what they were teaching outside, their unique understandings, dismissal of their unique understandings. You know, I've told people that like Freedom, he used to like not like the classroom. Now, that is the classroom structure, the concept of the classroom. He hated it. He didn't dislike it. He hated it. He thought it was oppressive. He thought it led to deification of the individual, meaning the teacher. Um, he didn't like any of it. He would give these commentaries while he was in my classroom. I never disagreed with him. In fact, I found a lot of them, and it was more of a challenge to say, is it possible for me as a teacher here to teach worthwhile enough where his reasonings against the entire structure are put to rest? Is it possible I could be the anomaly that is worthwhile? Well, all these conversations I had with Freedom when he would come to my class and build with students of mine, he always said he loved me, literally, right? He always said, continue to build, right? So I think I did, but they give a lot of slander when they could have disagreed when they were there. You know, I disagreed with many elders, and it became a wonderful discourse because I understood the nature of what a student is and how a student challenges, right? I don't think, I think, and I was telling Building with the God Malik, Building with the God King Kamal, I have a real disdain for what a lot of my peer group have done when it comes to that level. You know, they never really were challenging and disagreement to these elders to their face. You know, they kept it quiet though, and then they opened their mouths when they weren't here. You know, not only does that make them more conniving to me, but it also makes them bad students. You know, the living teacher should be questioned. You know, I saw a God that I know. You know, Brothers Learning. He was real sloppy, man. I had to scold him, get him right and exact. Now he's coming around and he's really studying. He's sharp. It's wonderful to see. And I saw him, and I'm usually by myself. I'm going again on the ferry. I'm about to, you know, write these rhymes, King. So I ain't writing no rhymes because I was building. And the brother goes, you know, how you see today's mathematics? And I mess with him. I know it's the build there. I'll tell you why. You know what I mean? I'll tell you why in a minute. That's a nice little add-on. I just feel like adding on with that. But I said, what is today's mathematics? And he said, no, you know, I thought, you know, you're supposed to know. And, you know, I'm asking you how you see it because I want to learn from you. So I said, yeah, God, then we will build, right? Because that's today's mathematics, right? We built the whole ferry ride. It was very peace. You know what I mean? But the reason that I was impressed with him now as a student is because he was asking challenging questions. Not to disrespect, but to challenge. There's a thin line between that. You know what I mean? It's a thin line. And he was there with that. You know what I mean? And it was good. You know, and that's peace. By the way, I definitely know it's the build day because yesterday was the God day. And on the God day, I got to see my youngest daughter perform in the play and at school. And she was amazing. You know what I mean? It just was amazing to hear her take center stage. She's not as old as the other kids in her school, so they don't get the top roles. But she had a role that had such charismatic lines. She was clever. She was funny, exuberant. She just had a real wonderful presence on stage, and I couldn't have been more prouder. And I know you know your children, so just like you would know your students or anything. I The most beautiful thing is I saw her really passionately working hard. You know, a lot of times kids, when they do the things like that, they kind of go through the motions. They're gonna do it, but they're just going through the motions. But she really was aware, very aware. You know, she did 2 more performances today, but I'm not able to go and see them because I taught today, and I'm also here. So, but I'm excited to see how they went. I'm sure that they went terrific. But you know, the God Day, seeing his fruit build, create, take center stage. It was wonderful. You know what I mean? Usually when I take my daughter places, I'm the one that people know, and and it was really nice. I was just Alma's father. You know what I mean? I didn't even tell people my name though. You know, I was identified as Alma's father. Like, yes, you need to know my name. I'm Alma's dad. You know what I mean? And it was nice. You know what I mean? But that's why I definitely knew it was the build day today. But the more that you know yourself as a student, the more you can prepare yourself as a teacher to allow, prepare, demand of that student that you do get. You know what I mean? Right? What do you expect out of a student? What is a student? You know what I mean? How are you able to teach in all types of situations? Right? Okay. Very important. You know? Uh, Malik, flesh that out a little bit. You said I have to come from a place of understanding when I ask questions. I'm not sure what that means. You know, because we can also ask questions. A lot of questions we have are really coming from a lot of ignorance that we have, and that's why they're a good question. Right? Peace to everybody here. Halftime. I think I said peace to every original man author. Trey Wilson, Jay. All right. Anybody has any questions, any builds? Let me know. I've had a long week. So just want to add on usefully with everyone here. You know what I mean? Okay, Malik, you just repeated the same thing, right? Just want to see if you could articulate that more to me. Because isn't a question from a place of ignorance? Doesn't have to be from a place of understanding. And if you're teaching people, expect all types of questions, and mostly the questions straight from ignorance. Sometimes people will ask a question that is illogical, but if you were in tune very well, you kind of can understand what the person was trying to insinuate. You know what I mean? Okay. So I don't know if it's going to be finished because I have the framework, right? I have the framework of the one to 10, but it's going to be a study sheet. It's going to point out certain things, and it's going to be led by the most important thing to point out: the mentality of how we see the entire 1 to 10, and then the mentality by which we see this knowledge degree and how that permeates throughout the entire thing. Right? People are expecting to learn just enough things to believe the knowledge degree. They will never challenge it, right? They will never test. They will never probe further. They will only be in tune with that, caring about that degree. So they'll accidentally find new proofs, but they still won't be good at countering negative proofs. for everyone, if you're still countering that there's a mystery God, people claiming that there's a mystery God, if you're still using rudimentary things like your only Bible verses that correspond, like Psalms 82 verse 6, it's not enough. It's not enough. Okay, we should be delving into the sciences, right? Deeper engagements of history, right? Okay, all of this, right? Very important. It won't give you answers, all the answers in the study sheet, but it will ask questions to ponder. Why are Christianity and Islam the two religions named? Right? No, excuse me. Christianity and Buddhism, the two religions named other than Islam. Right? Why are they named? I have my own understanding. Some of you have built with it and may remember. Right? What's the use of the population figures over time? Is this an outdated insight? Right? Study how fast you answer these questions. Sometimes people spitfire answers. They think, okay, there will be a difference between truly seeing something, seeing and understanding, and just explaining things away. All right? It's a big difference. Very big difference. Okay? Malik, you said, I see what you're saying. All questions derive from wanting to get an understanding. Ignorance is there as well, or to gain answer. I get it. I get it. You know? All the question is articulated ignorance. And so we're somehow tapped into why shouldn't I know this? Why can't I do that? Why is it like this? The more you flesh out those daily questions, the more that your in-depth questions begin. Okay? And it's important. If you can't develop a question and you're just reciting answers that people give you, you know? Boy, how did I just finding bruises, you know what I mean? You know, just finding bruises. All right. Do we test things by saying, why is it wrong? As opposed to, why is the knowledge degree right? Our minds are going to take the knowledge degree in the 1 of 10, and we are going to regularly look for it to be correct. That will take us to many correct places, but it won't be enough. You have to do more. Yes, God. Yeah. Self, which helps one to look from within and not waste time. Waste, you spell waste. Waistline, not waste. Time and that which does not exist. I'm special what you got. Or you could destroy in general by doing any of this as a civilized person. That's right. A build that I always have is that I do not see hell as something imposed on us. Hell is the work that we have to go through. And if you say, listen, I set up none of this work out here, none of it. You're here. You're in this time frame. If Allah is all one, and mind detect mind, and the generations of mind realized and chose, I ought to be here. You chose this. See the time and place that you are in as something chosen. The hells you go through, most of them ought not to be. Some of them are horrible. Some of the things that no one would wish on anyone else. And yet we're still forced to continue on with this life. And of us in years, America though, we only know of the worst hells. Our generations, no matter how crazy we may have lived, we don't know the worst hells. The worst hells back in the motherland, back in Africa, back through Southeast Asia, back through the Congo, Southern Africa, throughout Latin America, South America, Mexico, Honduras, Guatemala, right? Ecuador. Places with genocides and war, the Gaza Strip. No matter what anybody says, no matter how tough your life was in Brownsville or anybody else, anywhere else, Watts, it wasn't what those people go through. And so we have this opportunity maybe not to succeed in revolution the way we would think, but that's not why you build. You build because the more you build, mathematics shows and proves that the more that you add on, mathematics only adds on in a progressive state. 1 through 9, never backwards. 1 through 9, add on a cipher, never backwards. And so it is absolutely always possible, absolutely a truth, that every time that you build, even if you do not receive the fruit of these benefits, there is the massive possibility that it must be so, right? That others will, King, you said you have a question. Can one also be considered destroying by handling our culture by operating tradition? Every time you build, you are destroying the state that there was. God, we make a song, God, we had X amount of songs together. But now that number's different. Right? At once it was 10, then 15, then 25, then 35. You see what I'm saying? Building that up. The previous state of reality, no matter how positive it once was, is never an infinitely powerful reality. Whatever cipher, however you describe the said cipher, it is only that for a minute amount of time. Or even if it is for an very much extended period, let's say thousands of years of a dynasty, it is still only a select moment. Let me know if that answers the question somewhat. So this 1 to 10 sheet is gonna have, it's be like the 1 to 36. That one is done. I've shared that. Wrote that years ago. It'll have certain books, not every book, but books to get you off in studying that. Analyzing the sciences that need to be taught to make it effective. All right. Peace to the God, infinite mind. Okay. And guys, listen. Don't get caught up with people that are still trying to gatekeep. Okay. Show and prove that you're the true and living God by the works that you create. No one will know you I'm telling you, nobody knows who I am. Nobody. You know what I mean? When I go out there, people know me by my works. They don't know me. Only people that know me might say, I don't know what they say, you know. It's a funny guy, he's cool to be with, whatever. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. You know what I mean? That's for other people to say what type of friend I am or whatever. You know what I mean? But they know me by works that are dependent upon principles. When people know your works, then they know the dependent principles that make those works possible, and now you are also then defined by your principles, right? People know me by my works, though, but then they also define me by my principles. If I am known anywhere, okay, this is important. You need to be noticed, acknowledged for your works, okay? Peace, Jake De Niro. Very welcome. Oh, that's peace, God. That's peace. You know, Panama, a lot of wonderful things. Also known as a place where one of the most vile subgenres in history was ever devised. Reggaeton. Not holding it against them, because it's really Puerto Ricans that mutated it more and more. You know, but I'm not much of a fan of the beginnings of it either. So I hate it all the way. Right, right, all the way, all the way. Guys, look up that song, Frank Sinatra, "All the Way." You know what I mean? It's a beautiful song, right? But it's about doing things all the way. You know what I mean? If you don't do things all the way, then it's not love. You know what I mean? Bad Buddy, I had the yeah. Oh, hopefully I kept that short. Uh, oh man, yeah, guys, I'm gonna be here in about 20 more minutes. You know what I mean? Trying to be here an hour. I'm working to give at least an hour session. Okay, there's this guy with my work. There's so much travel that I do that sometimes when I need to rest, those little minutes that I might say, okay, it's an hour versus an hour and 15 minutes, I could use those 15 minutes. It really makes a difference, especially like traveling to Staten Island because I travel via the ferry, so it's doing me a good service. I think so. I never followed in Hannah's career, It's all it all came off as just pop dance music. I didn't really, you know. Yeah, I am very beat today. I'm very beat. I just really, I put it all out there with these kids. You know what I mean? They were actually good. They weren't bad, but sometimes when they're good, it's a lot of hard work. You know what I mean? And see, when it gets warmer, we take them out. So what happens is that all the grades are out there. So I'm not just dealing with one grade. Like let's say third grade that I usually have today. Um, I'm dealing with third, fourth. So all the kids that want to do stuff with me, third, fourth, fifth. I'm dealing with all of them. So if I don't keep going, I get very tired. You know what I mean? But right. Plus two, I had seen my daughters play last night, so that kind of left me. I got home late. You know what I mean? I got home late. You know, because I couldn't just watch the play, hug her and everything. I wanted to see how she interacted with everybody. Just it was wonderful seeing. I love it. Like when I see my kids in the limelight. You know what I mean? I'm sitting in the back. You know what I mean? Just sitting in the back, just watching them do their thing. It's a wonderful thing, man. You know, it's a wonderful thing. You know, K7, are you killing me, King? Really? Yeah, they had a fun album. You know, I didn't know what, my daughter's play. I didn't know what it was about until I got there. You know what I mean? I didn't know what it was about until I got there. It was a cool play. I'm glad I didn't know anything because her charisma and she stole every scene that she was in. Word is bond, and it was such a wonderful surprise. So I didn't do lines with her. I didn't go over lines or anything with her. She didn't want me to. And maybe about a week after she started rehearsing, she already memorized the lines, which pretty good. It was very good, very well done because it wasn't like a big role, but it was a good amount of lines. And the fact that she delivered them with so much charisma and panache um, makes it all the more impressive. It's a great night. It was a great night. So I'm a little extra tired now, but in these last 15 minutes that I'm here, I just want it to be worthwhile. Let you know that I am working on this. I think so, you know. I think so because she's been around me. I've taken her to podcasts that I've done. I've taken her to other things, just like both of my daughters. So they've seen me conduct media, me hold fort. She's been with me recording a lot of these songs that we've done, King. A lot of these songs, you know what I mean? So, and on some of them too. So, um, that took away a lot of fear. You know, yeah, yeah. I think as she gets older, she'll even be able to feel comfortable enough to sing on stage. You know, that's one of the first things that I noticed. She sang. School plays always sing, but she sang like when groups of the smallest was groups of three, but not solo. So only the older kids had solos. But really great stuff. Really great stuff. I was very impressed. I was. I'm not surprised at anything my children do amazing. Um, but I'm just, amazed. It's really, you know, yeah, you know. But every day you're challenging yourself. Every day this knowledge is not true. Every day something has to add on to it, and sometimes that add-on could be just the question of dissent, of contradiction. Where is the flaw? What is wrong here? You know what I'm saying? Right? All of this is within the realm, you know? Right? The building. How do we build? What is building? Building means that you change the reality of the cipher, that you showed and proved that you're the true and living God, and so you built. You had to show and prove that you was God from the equality that you brought forth via the power of your culture. Once that, you know, once that happened, now you had the reality to change what once was and what now is will no longer be. Building. There are some guys that don't like the word build to be used like when we talk to each other about supreme math and things like that. I disagree with that. I think when we formulate the mental boundaries of what our spirituality is, that there is no mystery, that it is us, how we deal with it mathematically, how do we see it through supreme mathematics. This is building because these mentalities have never existed. This is my thought. The black man being God is a truth that always existed. Many of the formulations of how we show and prove it and how we articulate it, I say many of it did not exist before. We are creating this anew. the articulation, the detailing of it, the expression of it. We're doing something next level. If that is not building, I don't know what is. Because we are building and it is changing the mindset, generations to come. Where the possibility of man being God at the moment that he is, and not when someone tells him he is so, has never been done this outwardly, this expansively. You know what I mean? Right? My top chef, my oldest daughter's doing great. You know what I mean? She is full steam ahead, not only working, but also setting up slowly but surely, saying it's not good enough. I want my own business too. And doing it at a younger age than I ever started this when it comes to that. And I'm just, her mentality is so much about self empowerment. You know, I love that. I love that. You know, but and it's these are the lessons that I try to impress. You know, appreciate that self magnetic. You know, definitely was beautiful. Definitely was beautiful. You know what I mean? You know, but guys, I'm almost out of here. I'm gonna be out of here in like 8 minutes and stuff. You know what I mean? Be time to go. You know, any questions that you have, I will answer it. You know, putting it out there. You know. By the way, you know, the books, Knowledge of Self, and the books that I do, the work I do in hip hop, these lead me to have students that are in the prisons. A lot of stuff I've had circulates the prisons. There are many things I've written that circulate the prisons. I write something that has real jewels. I don't even, um, I leave it just for that person. Sometimes I'll write some of the, maybe, sometimes I'll jot it down. If it was good jewels, I'll jot it down in my journal. But usually it's for that person, you know. I may share some of it to people that is I can use if I remember, but they're from my own thoughts and ideas at the time. But I'm impressing you that everywhere in the world there are people that are willing to go the extra mile to build in ciphers that you, the average you out there, would be demoralized and absolutely deflated. I have students that write me, multiple students that's doing life bids. And I showed this to my daughter one time. Next time you don't appreciate knowledge. This man is doing a life bid. I made her read the letter to me. Now so they know, they got to know how powerful the Father is, right? Because this person looked for me and told me why they looked for me. But more importantly, way more importantly, this person is not getting out. But that cipher that they have is now their world. And damn it, they're going to build that world righteous if it's the last thing that they do. It's powerful. Just think about that for a minute. They're guaranteed no reach beyond the small cipher of that prison. And their life's mission now is to make that cipher righteous. Peace, God. Everything's peace, God. Peace to the God. Peace. Everything's peace, God. But think about that for a moment, you know? Their entire life's reality. It's just that small area. So see how expansive it is in the small area, this here, the block that you live on, right? the blog area, the small reach, right? Of listeners, niche markets, right? Everything is real, right? Everything is real. Oh yeah, you know me. So back then, that's why I'm the lone low life with the home sewn garment, right? Right? Lone low life with the home sewn garment. You know what I mean? Because I'm, the low lives show me how to dress professionally. Like people be just thinking it's all color blocking and colors and all that. How to dress professional environments, casual environments, festive environments. We watch hip hop stuff, we only see the festive environment. We don't see all the other ciphers that brothers be dressing for. You know what I mean? And doing it special. And that's what I learned the most, where I could really express myself because there's the clothing line is unlimited that we dealing with here, right? But it's also a creative aspect too. So it's not about how much money I spent on famous or coveted pieces. It's what particular pieces and what I do to the pieces that make them so. So that's just a little add-on, because most of us don't think about the way that we dress. You know what I mean? I put science into everything, God. I study the different colognes. I study the bottoms, mids, and tops of the colognes I wear. You know what I mean? Where do I wear the colognes? You know what I'm saying? The weather, the occasions, what type of pants, where do I wear them? I think of all these things. You know what I mean? Right? And when it's limited and I don't have enough for each cipher, then I start to expand. You know what I mean? So, you know what I mean? The way we present ourselves to the world is a science, but it's a science based on arts as well. It's also an art. You know what I mean? Just like most sciences are art. You know? Guys, I've been here for 2 more minutes, so I'm just gonna say that it's time to let everybody go. Okay, it's time to travel, guys. When I get out of here, when I leave, I almost always, today will be the case, I go and buy my Trader Joe's, my foods, my healthy foods, and plan my diet for the rest of the week. You know what I mean? There's no veering away. Sunez doesn't stop over at the bodega and get himself extra chips, ice cream, none of that shit. Or a health food store and get ice cream treats. No. Everything is structured. If I treat myself, it'll be the extra fruit, it'll be the extra kombuchas, right? Et cetera, et cetera. That's really how we do it. You know what I mean? And so that's where I'm going now. But guys, keep sharp, keep building. And guys, Sunez 97. If you have my math, add on with me. All right? Add on with me so we can build. All right? Peace to the guys. You know what I mean? Until next time. Right? Peace.